Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Uncorporate World. I'm your host, Dr. Heidi, and today I'm with my co-host, Diana. Hi, Diana. How are you?
Great, how are you?
Excellent. Thank you for being here. And our guest today is the wonderful Anna Burns. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Heidi. How are you?
Excellent, excellent.
Great.
So, Anna, let's kick it off and just have you tell our audience a little bit about yourself, what it is you do, and how you kind of got into it.
Yeah, so I am an ADHD coach for adult women. I kind of specialize with female entrepreneurs. ADHD and entrepreneurship go hand in hand. So, so that's what I do. I do one-on-one coaching. I do group coaching. I help women with things like time management, prioritizing, starting tasks, finishing tasks, staying on task, helping with long-range projects, making sure that they know exactly where the road map is. And so, yeah, that's what I do now. I'm trained as a physical therapist. So I was doing physical therapy only until COVID. And then when COVID hit, I started my own virtual practice. And then I had my son. And when I had my son, it was May 2020, and it was the height of COVID. And so I found not long after he was born, like I just feel like my brain broke. And I've been treated for anxiety and depression since I was 18 years old. And I just remember talking to my therapist and saying, we're missing something. Like something is not right. If people were struggling this much, they wouldn't have more than one child. And so we kind of looked into it. My sister had given me a book called Women with Attention Deficit Disorder by Sari Solden. And I got that book and I was just like, underlining everything. It's like, oh my gosh, I do this, I do this, I do that, I do that. And that was when I kind of figured out what that missing piece was. And so as I was diagnosed and I dove deep into understanding my brain and what happens with the ADHD brain, I decided that I was just passionate about being a resource for other women, because we are the biggest part of the pot that's being diagnosed right now is adult women, because a lot of times we were missed as young kids. Like I had zero idea I had ADHD, zero idea. But then once I learned all the symptoms, I was like, oh, I've been flying under the radar for so long. And it was that hormonal change and the extra demand on my brain that really kicked everything into full gear. And so I've been coaching and ever since.
You know, I think that's a big question that a lot of people wonder, and I've wondered it myself too, because you see it all over social media, adult women getting diagnosed later in life. But fortunately, it seems like more children are getting diagnosed earlier on now. And I've always wondered to myself, like, what is that gap? Was it that the medical field didn't really know what to look for? Like, how did we miss so many people? Because I don't think it's an influx of suddenly, oh, we have more people with it. I think it's just that we had a generational gap where it wasn't noticed, and now it's catching up. But it just gives that outside appearance that, oh, we suddenly have an influx of it.
Right. So the interesting thing is that women and girls tend to present more with what's called the inattentive subtype. And so generally the boys are like the hyperactive type. And so you can see them, bouncing off the walls in class and like disrupting and all of that kind of stuff. But the inattentive type tend to be like the daydreamers. So it looks like we're listening, but we've got 45 discussions going on in our head at the same time. And so it looks like we're doing fine. It looks like we're paying attention. And so we're not getting flagged as kids. And so now, and I think back, even when I first went to college, I got all sorts of testing because, there was just something off and I couldn't figure out what it was. And they're like, yeah, just drink some coffee before you go to class. You'll be fine. And that's like, because they weren't looking for it in women. They weren't looking for it in girls. And so that's why now, like, as more kids are getting diagnosed, their parents are sitting in the room when they're getting all the reports being like, oh, I think I have it too. Like that's what happened to my sister. She had no idea until she got her son tested. And then all of a sudden she's like, oh yeah, I do too. And so it's a very common thing for that to be happening. Cause I think we're diagnosing better. We're diagnosing quicker. And I think the different, I don't know, we're getting to define it better. We're defining ADHD better. And so we're able to screen for it better.
Really interesting. I've heard so many things about ADHD and not myself having ever experienced it. I always wonder, like, what is the truth and what are the myths? Are there like some common myths out there that you could talk about that maybe just gives a little bit more truth into what exactly it is and it isn't?
Yeah. So I think very often people think of hyperactivity as
Yeah.
as a thing. Not everybody who has ADHD is hyperactive. We might have hyperactive brains, but our bodies are not hyperactive. I also think that there's this kind of, I don't know if it's a true myth, but people are always like, we're all a little ADHD. And it's like, no. If you have ADHD, you're struggling behind the scenes. And it's in every part of your life. It's not just like, oh, we live in a distracted society. It's like, no, we're having trouble like getting through our days, getting through, meal planning, following a planner, getting places on time. Like it's a bigger thing than just like, oh, we're a little distracted. It's a much bigger thing than that.
Yeah. I'm curious, Anna, where you talk about working with women entrepreneurs mostly, do you find that women with ADHD tend to do better running their own business where they can fit their own schedule than the traditional, career path, the Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, Fortune 500 traditional company, because they don't usually give a lot of leniency to certain things. They follow policies and things like that, whereas we can set our own policies, right?
Right. So entrepreneurship is great for people with ADHD because we, like you said, like we can build our own systems. We can do things our own way, but we're also like, we're really creative. We have tons of ideas. We can pivot really quickly. And so I think those things all are, great assets to being an entrepreneur. But also, yeah, like sitting in front of a desk from 9 to 5 might not be the way that their brain works. Like for me, I did like a desk job right out of college and I was like, I cannot do this. Like went to physical therapy school and it was great. But even in PT school, once I was working as a PT, like trying to see patient after patient after patient after patient after patient, like it totally burnt me out because I wasn't being able to use my brain the way I needed to at like the times of day that I was at my best. So like once I created my own virtual practice, I was able to set my hours. I was able to say, okay, I work really well from these hours and then my brain shuts off. So that's not when I'm going to be doing my admin work, my creative work, any of that. So I think for me, the blessing of being my own boss is creating a way that honors my brain so that I'm not trying to force creativity or force production when my brain is offline.
That makes a lot of sense.
It also lets me kind of do my interest projects. Like I can say, all right, let's try this. Let's give it a shot and see what works. So I think that there's a lot of a benefit to being able to really create a schedule, or not even just a schedule, but just like a rhythm in one's business around one's own brain instead of trying to fit the neurodiverse brain into the neurotypical mold, because that just doesn't work.
Doesn't work. So, I think about, I'm sitting here seeing Diana, thinking about high school students getting ready to go into college, right? That's a big change for a lot of people. I mean, up to this point, you had a little bit more structure. You had your parents kind of right there by your side. And not to say that they're abandoning you, Diana, they're not at all. Right. But when you go off to college, you do gain a little bit more freedom, right? And I would think that would be a big challenge initially for somebody who has ADHD, kind of going into that environment with less structure and now having to figure out how to build that structure in also something that is already a scary environment, right? Living on your own for the first time, doing laundry, trying to manage your class schedules. Do you have any advice for high school students who are starting to go in that direction, how they can maybe already get themselves into good habits to get ready for that?
Yeah, I think knowing how to manage your time, knowing how to break things down into small bits, knowing, like saying ahead of time, like, okay, I know I do better with a schedule. I do better with planning ahead. It's kind of like putting like the bumpers on the bowling alley.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, I don't need a rigid, like, here's what I'm doing every minute of the day, but I know that my brain works better in the morning. So maybe that's my time that I'm taking classes. Maybe I'm a night owl and that's my time where I can like do my work. So creating some sort of schedule is very helpful, because it's when we take away that
Mhm.
structure, that's when the brain is kind of like, oh, well, what do I do now? Like, I can do a million things, and there are friends, and there are, extracurriculars and all of this. So like creating a routine, creating like, okay, Monday is laundry day, Tuesday is clean my room day, and just kind of making that soft routine, so that way you're not having to make all of those decisions in the moment. Because I think when we try to decide, do I want to clean my room or do I want to go hang out with friends down the hall? Like, we
Yeah.
tend to not make those decisions always great right in that moment. So kind of looking at, building your classwork around your good parts of the day, um, and then building in a good study routine. If you need to go to the library and study because you need quiet, do it. If you work better with like background noise, go to the student center and sit, and there's background noise, but
Mm.
finding those environments. It doesn't always have to be in your room. It doesn't always have to be in the library, but finding what you need to stay focused is really, really helpful.
Other than that, I was wondering if there are any like other study habits that you think will like actually work for ADHD students.
Like study habits, you said?
Yes.
Yeah. Um, I think breaking things down into really tiny pieces is helpful. So when sometimes like long-term projects are really tricky. So like when you're writing a paper or you've got like an end of the semester, um, project, or, final or whatever, really backing things up and planning them in like little tiny pieces. Because if you wait and wait and wait and wait and wait, which is a very ADHD thing to do, then you're
Mhm.
getting that like panic, procrastination, 3 a.m, I'm just like typing. So if you can, and it feels like, oh my gosh, I don't even know where to start. Right. And so if you can break things down into tiny pieces, like, you know, read the first page of this book on this day. Now you're like being able to do things that make it easier to start and make it easier to stay on track. So kind of that looking ahead and planning ahead is really helpful. So just to keep you moving. Sometimes when our brain thinks that a task is really unclear, or like I don't know all the steps to get to things, we just kind of go, okay, well, not now. I'll deal with that later. And then later becomes later, and later becomes later. And now it really does feel like I don't know where to start, but I need to pass this in tomorrow. Right.
Yeah.
So kind
And I
of
think
breaking
that's great
down.
advice for everybody, right?
Yeah.
Um, because Diana, you're going to have professors who are going to come to you, say in September, and say, here's your syllabus. And they're not going to give you a roadmap. They're going to say, this project's due on this day, this project's due on this day, and this project's due on this day. With my students, I look at them, I'm like, you're adults, you're accountable. I'm going over it. You're on your own now. You're not going to get a reminder of when it's due. You're not going to get, hey, remember, you got 1 week out, make sure you're starting to work on that. So making that roadmap is going to be critical. The only project, and I'm nice to my students on that one, is my final big project, because I really got frustrated over the years of just knowing that people were doing it in the last 48 hours. So I actually broke it into 4 deliverables. One is like topic deliverable, then it's, outline, and then it's project part 1, and then it's project part 2. And I did get a better end result. But that's what Anna's talking about. It's like having to build that roadmap during the term and really sticking to it. And I think, honestly, whether you have ADHD or not, I think that's just good advice for anybody who's used to being in high school and your teacher going, remember that project's due on Friday, and they're telling you that on Monday, and they're helping you and they're giving you reminders along the way. Not everyone's going to do that for you.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a skill that you'll
Right.
learn and develop, kind of like knowing that ahead of time instead of being like, oh, I'm in the weeds already and it's my first semester, is helpful, and just because you're not going to have all the reminders, like you said. And, sometimes we put things in our phone, like due dates, but then we don't set reminders ahead of time. So like, I even say like, use a paper planner, like something that you can't like shut off and forget, write it out, make sure you like plan it out ahead of time. Cause that's going to be your like visual reminder. If you're not a calendar person. So.
I have an interesting question for Anna. So if you can like redesign school for like students with ADHD, what will you like change first?
Change first.
Everything.
Right, exactly. I think, and things may have changed a lot since I was in school. So throwing that out there, creating different ways of learning. Not all kids do great sitting and listening to a teacher. Some people do better with writing things down or different projects they can do with their hands. Some are visual learners instead of auditory learners. For me in high school, I remember I had a really hard time with reading comprehension, like not comprehension, but like retention. And so I learned very early on that I need to listen to books. And I do that to this day. Like I listen to audiobooks. If you give me a paper book, I'm not going to finish it. So kind of learning different styles, like, and just understanding that not all kids learn the same way. And so different types of deliverables or different ways of interacting with the information instead of just kind of like sitting and listening.
And I don't think you're going to find that much has changed, at least in the public school systems. I mean, yes, they do have some, enrichment days where they bring in some outside people, but it's a day. It's not the whole curriculum, right? My daughter goes to a private school. Even there, I mean, I see a lot of great in education and it's fantastic. But what you're talking about, like if everyone's supposed to sit quietly on the floor and read the book, and someone's struggling and could do better doing it a different way, I don't know that they have the ability to pivot and do that. But what I have noticed over the years is at least here in Massachusetts, that's what I can speak to. We have a much higher rate of people leaving the traditional school system and going into homeschooling co-ops. Yeah. And I'm wondering if this is somewhat what's driving it too. Our students, like you said, parents recognizing my child needs to learn in a different way, or they do better more outside learning and do more of like the nature type learning. If that is a big catalyst for why people are choosing that route as well. I haven't done much research in that area because I know more.
Yeah, because I think when a parent sees a kid struggle, you want to do what you can for that kid, right? And if you're seeing that the public school can't cater and can't like you said, can't pivot, can't. My son is in a class of 24 kids, right? Yeah. And so it's in kindergarten. So it's a lot of chaos, and it's hard for the teachers just to be able to cater to each kid. And so probably, and I think also from COVID too, once, parents saw kids learn in a different way, either it was either awesome for some kids or it was like the bane of their existence, right? They had to learn differently, kind of. But I think a lot of people probably do move around their kids to find the right fit. Because I think if the kid isn't supported and isn't feeling good about themselves and their learning, they're not going to succeed, right? And they're not going to want to go to school. They're not going to like learning. They're not going to, put in the effort. So, as they get older.
How do you help people when they have the mindset that, they feel different than other people? They feel like other people have it so much easier than they do because they don't have the differences, and they just kind of get in that mindset of putting themselves down, and maybe don't feel like they can accomplish what other people are accomplishing. How do you work through sort of that mindset and that thinking?
Yeah, that's a huge thing, because especially with adult women, like we have spent our entire lives comparing ourselves to other people and being like, why can they do it so much easier? Like, what am I missing? Like, why? So we deal with it in a way that says, hey, you are wired differently, and there are many beautiful things, and you can do all these things. You just need to do them in ways that honor your brain. Like if you can't do it the way that everybody else does, you can do it. It just needs to be in your own way. Because I find so many like highly intelligent women who like I have a doctorate, like who have gone, to grad school and done amazing things. And, along the way, people are like, oh, you're too smart. You're too smart for ADHD. And it's like, that totally like minimizes that struggle, right? And so I think that, women can do amazing, amazing things with ADHD. It's just figuring out how to make life easier. When we stop comparing ourselves and we just, hey, and I love the education part of my coaching, because it's like, this is why you do these things. Like, here's what's happening. And we need to get your brain to do, to get, more reward, more dopamine, more like good stuff. And once you can do that and you can start to be successful and you feel like things are easier, you give yourself that permission to be like, oh, I can change that. Oh, well, if that worked, maybe I can try this, so thinking outside the box and saying like, I can absolutely do whatever I want. I just need to believe in myself, understand how my brain works so that I'm able to make the choices and put on the supports to get to whatever my goal is.
Fantastic. So Diana, I think you made a game, right?
Oh, yes.
Would you like to do that with Anna now?
Yeah. It's called ADHD Myth or Fact. So basically you can explain and tell us that whether these like common like stereotypes or like misunderstanding about ADHD, whether if it's like a fact or a myth.
Okay. You can expand on it too.
So the first one is, many successful entrepreneurs have ADHD.
Truth, or fact, I should say. Yes, absolutely. Because we had talked about how the ADHD brain is really great for entrepreneurs, because we want to, we have these great ideas and we see different ways of doing things. And so we go, oh, well, why don't we just do it this way? This way works so much better for me or whatnot. So yeah, it's always exciting. So it very much is stimulating for the brain.
So for the next one, I think we kind of already mentioned this, but hyperfocus can be a strength.
Hyperfocus can be a strength. And we have, hyperfocus is when you like put the blinders on and you focus on something for a very long time. So, and this is kind of I'm going to take a little sidestep here and say attention deficit disorder or attention deficit hyperactivity disorder is not a deficit of attention. It is a difficulty with directing the attention. So sometimes we can hyperfocus because our brain is really, really interested in that thing. And so our brain just wants to like spend all the time on that one thing. And that can be great when you're in that zone and to get things done. It can also be like you go down a rabbit hole of researching like why, I don't know, rabbits eat grass. And like 3 hours later, you're like, oh, I was going to put food in the stove. So it's like, it's a double-edged sword kind of like when it's great, it can be great. But it's also something to watch out for.
Yeah. I was wondering, is there like a trick for people to kind of snap themselves out of that? Because I was thinking exactly what you were thinking, like, if it's a good topic that they need to be researching, like that's an amazing strength. But like, as you said, there does come a point, even on the good research, there does come a point where you're like, all right, enough's enough. And I probably should move on now. Like, how do you transfer? Like, how do you get out of that mode to move past that?
Some of it is like timers, alarms, right? Like if you know that you're going to be way down that rabbit hole, set a timer, set an alarm. It can be like a visual timer if you need the visual piece of things. But if you know you're prone to that, that's a great thing to do. Another thing is looking at enough is enough, because sometimes we are perfectionists, and this doesn't necessarily have to be ADHD, but I do see a lot of perfectionism in ADHD because it's a way of like masking our symptoms and our deficits. And so that piece of things, and I just lost my train of thought. Like ADHD. The alarms and anyway. It'll come back.
The alarms sound fantastic. I like that idea.
Yeah.
The next one I have is being disorganized usually means someone has ADHD.
Myth. People can be very disorganized and not have ADHD. On the other hand, a lot of people who have ADHD can be disorganized in different ways. Whether it's physical clutter, whether it's digital clutter, whether it's mental clutter, but it's not necessarily that all ADHD people are disorganized.
So being disorganized is more like a thing that is caused by bad habits rather than
Some of it can be. Yeah, some of it can be. Either bad habits, or you just not paying attention and taking the time to do what needs to get done. So things kind of pile up. Like you throw something on your desk and you go, I'll deal with that later. And then you go around and then you don't see it because you're not back at your desk for a while. So, there are lots of things that, just with a little bit of attention to it, because I feel like, especially, with, kids and college kids, you're still learning how to be organized. Right. And so if you can create those habits early, then it makes life a lot easier later.
The next one I have is everyone with ADHD experiences it in the same way.
Myth, definitely. Even people with the same subtype, there's the hyperactive type subtype, there's the inattentive subtype, and then there's the combined. Even within one subtype, people present very differently. The challenges for my clients from one to another vary significantly. Someone might have a really hard time with physical clutter. Sometimes people have a hard time managing time. Sometimes people have a hard time folding the laundry. I don't know why folding the laundry is the number one thing that my ADHD people talk about. It's terrible. So everybody has different struggles. Everybody presents very differently. Also depending on their personality, their situation, their goals, all that.
The next one I have is creativity is often linked to ADHD.
It is often linked. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think every person who has ADHD is necessarily have to be creative, or every creative person has ADHD, but there is a very strong correlation because our brains work in different ways. And so often we have to be creative in terms of how we're, building a business, or how we are approaching our schedules or our time or priorities. So I think there is definitely an association, but not necessarily I don't want to say causation, but they're not definitively linked.
I think that's all I have.
Those are great myths. I love great myths and facts. Very nice.
That was fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So Anna, before we let you go today, is there one final thing that we haven't talked about, piece of advice you can give, something that you're like, oh, I wish they had brought this up, but they didn't, that you might like to share with us?
I think the main thing that I really try to give my clients is self-compassion and grace. And we spend so much time berating ourselves, thinking this whole guilt shame spiral that is not helpful. And so, I think understanding your brain gives you the power to see what's happening and to understand why, and then it stops being this awful weight around your neck. So
that's amazing advice. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us today and giving us your time. We really appreciate it.
This was great. Thank you so much. It was great to talk to both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.